The fiscal year 2012 budget is built upon the consensus revenue estimate that Governor Nixon, Senator Mayer, and Representative Sylvie agreed to in December. That agreement is based on the assumption that revenues will continue to recover as the economy recovers, and in particular as Missourians go back to work. The estimate is that we will have 4% growth in our revenue next year. That will generate $7.3 billion in net general revenue collections. It's definitely good to see growth. We're seeing growth now. We're anticipating additional growth next year. That $7.3 billion will, though, still be $700 million below where we were 3 years ago, just to put it into some context. The other challenge for fiscal year 2012 is the phase out of the federal stabilization funds. Because of the federal money going away, we will have additional significant reductions in the fiscal year 2012 budget. The governor's proposal includes a total of $704 million worth of reductions and other solutions, which I will walk through momentarily. Even with the challenging budget situation, there are a couple of priority areas for the governor where he is protecting and in some cases providing additional resources in fiscal year 2012. First, by partnering with the local school districts, we'll be able to maintain level funding for the foundation formula when you look at fiscal year 11 and 12 together. That will require local schools to carry over some resources from the current year into next year. But if they do that, we will have level funding between the 2 years. In addition to that, the governor is recommending an increase for the transportation program for K through 12 schools. In addition to continuing the $7.5 million that he announced last week, there would be another $7.5 million above that level. So a $15 million increase from where we thought we would be when this fiscal year started. The budget also provides an increase for the A+ scholarship program. It continues funding for the currently eligible students and includes a small expansion for students who are in schools that are not designated A+, whose family's income falls below a certain level. The governor is also proposing a $2 million increase for both Bright Flight and the Access Missouri Scholarship Program. And in addition to that, there is a $5 million increase for the Customized Training Program. Before I walk through the $704 million worth of solutions that I mentioned, I would just like to point out that the reductions in the budget are on top of things that have already happened. So over the last couple of years, we've already taken a lot of actions with the House and Senate to keep the budget in balance. We have made significant reductions to the state workforce. We've reduced our leased space. We have reduced contracting costs, energy costs. More recently, the governor worked with the legislature to get pension reform passed, our state employees' pension system. That not only put the pension system on more sound footing, but it also saves tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer money over the next few years. All of those actions, plus the actions that the governor is proposing tonight, have and will continue to ensure that our budget stays in balance. With that, I'm going to turn to this handout, this clipped handout, page 1. Before I open it up for questions, I am going to walk through the $704 million, and then I'll open it up for questions. It's the one that has page 1 handwritten at the bottom of the page, that handout. In the middle of that first page, you will see $704 million outlined, how we are proposing balancing the budget. $270.8 million of that is by making the current year expenditure restrictions permanent. So most of the expenditure restrictions that happened this year would be permanent, with just a few exceptions that I just mentioned, which include the transportation program will get a slight increase, as well as Access and Bright Flight. I also mentioned that we're going to be partnering with the K through 12 schools. What we will be doing is asking them to carry over from the current year into next year $112 million. If they do that, there will be level funding between the 2 years for the foundation formula. Within the Medicaid program, $67.4 million worth of cost containment efforts. Federal stabilization fund dollars, we're going to save $64.9 million worth of federal stabilization fund money that would have been spent this year and spend it next year instead. For the 4-year higher education institutions, a 7% reduction in the funding that goes to those institutions, which is the $53.6 million. For staffing, an additional 860 staff reduction. Also fringe savings and some savings on the expense and equipment side, all added together are $38 million in savings. We also have a proposal to refinance our debt for a lower interest rate, which will save $37 million. There are multiple projections for doing a better job of collecting our existing debt and other revenue that will generate $25.6 million. We're proposing a tax amnesty plan that will generate $20 million. For the community and technical colleges, the same 7% reduction as for the 4-year institutions is a savings of $10.2 million. And then finally, the last item on that list, some of the recommendations from the Tax Credit Review Commission. The savings from those changes in the first year, $4.5 million. Much more significant changes in the out years if they implement those. These proposals combined eventually would save $80 million, the proposals from the Tax Credit Review Commission.